When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the differences between Euron Greyjoy in the books and Euron Greyjoy in the show. And as a lot of you know, this is probably the worst adapted character that was put into the show Game of Thrones. And so in this video, we're going to go through in a lot of ways why I think they got this character wrong, everything that the book does way better in introducing the character, and overall, why the character is so great in the book, but comes off as probably one of the worst, if not the worst character in the television show. And I always love Halloween week because I get to do some of these topics that are, maybe they're more mysterious or dark or they're horrifying. And all of that really is wrapped into one bow with Euron because in a lot of ways, he's a mysterious character that we have very little actual information on. We only see him really a couple times in the entire series, but at the same time, we know he's this horrible dude. He does awful actions, whether it's the way he probably treated his younger brother Euron and possible sexual abuse that was going on, and the possibility that he killed his brother Balon, which, honestly, Balon was kind of an idiot and did more harm than good. So I can't really blame Euron on that one, even though we know he just wanted the crown. And even that part of it, in the book, we don't really know if Euron killed Balon. It seems like he obviously did, but it's not like confirmed. It's not something where it's like in the show, they straight out tell you, yeah, Euron just killed Balon. Like they just take all the mysteriousness out of it and just show it to you. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this video topic. So I want to start with the books. I want to talk about how the books introduce the character of Euron especially versus how the show does it. So in the books, Euron is a character that we hear like one-off comments throughout the first three books. You know, Theon goes back to the Iron Islands in book 2, and we get, you know, a couple name drops to Euron and some alluding to that character. And really all we know about the character is like he seems like he's in exile. He's a very mysterious, but even built up to be like this dangerous character, the most dangerous one of all of the Greyjoys, but it's kind of left alone. We don't see this character of Euron in the first three books, and then all of a sudden, in A Storm of Swords, Balon Greyjoy dies. And it comes at a very interesting point in the story because it happens right before the Red Wedding, and Robb even is influenced by what actually happens with Balon, that he ends up making his own will. He starts thinking about what if he died? What would the state of his kingdom actually be? And so he starts thinking about who his heir should be, all that kind of stuff. And so it's all good foreshadowing because it all comes in the background of the main story. You know, George, I'm not sure if he fully had planned out the Ironborn plotline when he was writing book 2, but you know, when that all pays off in book 4 and we start the Ironborn plotline with Euron very early in the book, as I believe he's the second chapter of A Feast for Crows, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's Pate, then it's Euron, and then it's Hoda, and then we jump to Cersei. Besides the point, when we hop into A Feast for Crows, this whole plotline starts to expand. All these little foreshadowings to the Greyjoy plotline that was going to happen and who was going to take the throne starts to boil over. And what A Feast for Crows does a really good job of doing for me is the Ironborn plot specifically. On rereads, it's been one of my favorites because of the way George introduces it and explores the character of Euron from different point of views. It's kind of similar to the way Stannis is viewed. So Stannis is kind of viewed by like Crescent, Davos, Catelyn. Even in the first book, when people talk about Stannis, we're seeing different perspectives of the same man, and we don't necessarily know who he is. That's put to the extreme with Euron. So you have Euron, who is almost completely motivated by, you know, Euron trying to take the throne and coming back to make the Kingsmoot. You know, Euron is somebody that has a lot of influence and power, but he doesn't have enough to like take on Euron head to head. So he tries to call this Kingsmoot because he believes that his gods and the people will not let Euron sit the throne, and that will let Victarion, you know, take the throne. That's who he believes should be on the throne. It's a way of, you know, Euron manipulating the public. And because of that, it shows that Euron is willing to do drastic measures to get Euron off the throne. It tells you how much of a threat he is. And so we haven't even met Euron yet. And he's already a very menacing force because there's also the rumors that Euron comes back as soon as Balon died. That paints the idea of like, did Euron kill his own brother? And that's not really a question that's ever going to be answered, really. We get Euron dancing around it, but it's something that's like a hovering mystery. And that's the main part of Euron. Euron is a mystery of a character. As we get through each and every Ironborn POV, so next then we get Asha and we see her side of things and her trying to show that she should be the person that takes after her father. She is really Balon's last child because everybody believes Theon is dead at this point. And we see her, have her thoughts about Euron. And Asha is somebody that isn't even quite sure why, Euron was exiled or why he left for a few years. She doesn't know the full picture. Balon did not really talk about it. And so it adds to that mysteriousness that we're going to get with Victarion. Why was Euron gone for so long? And what did he do on his adventures going into Essos and all these different places we're going to learn later on from, Euron saying where he's gone. And then we finally get to Victarion 1. So Victarion is the last different, figure that needs to be introduced before the Kingsmoot happens. And his prelude chapter is perfect for getting us into the Kingsmoot because we already get introduced to Euron. And so Euron is this character where it's perfect that Victarion is the person that we see Euron through, because Victarion is the one that hates Euron the most because of their past. And we even see Euron as a character be really interestingly described by Victarion. The way that Euron comes off as this really cool pirate-esque figure. He has the eye patch over one eye, and he's described as being very charismatic and the most handsome of all of his father's sons. But you also have the idea that he has a smiling eye, which is his performative side. It's his side he shows to the public. And then he has his crow's eye, which is really Euron. That's his actual personality. He's this very evil and this dangerous foe that Victarion doesn't take lightly. Think about who Victarion is. He's the person that's been really in charge of the Greyjoy war effort, the person that Balon really, leaned on, especially in his war efforts. He's this great warrior. And even he is very wary of Euron, especially because of their past, of course. But you see that right away that, George R. R. Martin paints Euron to be a very serious threat. And that's why he's been built into, he's the next main bad of the series. Outside of the others and the White Walkers, all that, Euron is our next big antagonist because of the things he's promising, the things he wants to do. And so it all leads perfectly into Euron and his first introduction, where he's being questioned by Aeron on all these different things, that he can't sit the sea stone chair because he's not a godly man and all this stuff. And Euron's first dialogue, his first dialogue, is basically saying he knows more about the gods than everyone. He gives more sacrifices to, the drowned god than anyone, that maybe Aeron should be bowing to him, and that when people see his sails, they pray. It's already Euron showing that he views himself as almost like a god. That's what he's trying to become, that he spits in the face of all these other gods. Every time Euron does something, the gods don't respond. They don't punish him. They don't strike him down. And so he's almost this figure of going against even godly forces. He's so unique in that aspect of it because we don't really know what Euron believes, because we don't see, a genuine conversation with Euron until Victarion's second chapter, which is way after the Kingsmoot. We don't know what Euron really wants, or even if this is all an act, because we only see him performing. Even when we're introduced to him, he's addressing a whole group of people. This is very, theatrical for Euron in a lot of ways. Or is that really his true personality? And so then when you build into the Kingsmoot, and the Kingsmoot happens, Euron is definitely this villain, but he's this calculated one. He's somebody that understands how to motivate people in a way that Victarion and also Asha don't. He's somebody that understands what do people want to hear. He's a perfect politician. In a lot of ways, the Kingsmoot is a clash of ideologies. It's Asha wanting to be progressive. It's Victarion wanting to bring the old ways and continuing what Balon, started, reaving, all that kind of stuff, but still being very small scale. If you liked Balon, you're getting more of that from Victarion. Euron bridges both of those gaps. He's not going to go as far as being an extremist on either side. He's going to, on one hand, say that, yes, we should do some things differently. We should try and not just do these squabble raids in the north. We should get a dragon with Daenerys. And so he plays this middle road where he appeases both sides of the factions and gets everybody on his side. And so it's great because Euron shows himself to be very clever, as a very competent villain that we should take seriously. All that's built up throughout the first 4 books to the Kingsmoot has really been telling you that. It's been telling you that Euron is not somebody that's going to be pushed around. And you even think about the mysteriousness around the character, the fact that he's possibly gone to Valyria, that he has Valyrian steel armor, that he maybe had a dragon egg at one point and just threw it in the ocean, which I don't think anybody believes, but he might have been paying a faceless man to do that. He possibly could be this failed student of Bloodraven or the Three-Eyed Crow, whichever you want to believe there. Did he kill his own brother? There's so much that's unique about Euron because we don't know a lot about him. We get little bits and pieces, and we're trying to put together, is Euron a fraud or is he legit? And you just don't know because you only see him when he's speaking to crowds of people up until the very end of Victarion 2. So Victarion 2 and Feast, we actually get to have like a one-on-one conversation, and Euron seems a little bit more vulnerable. He seems a little bit more like an actual person, where Euron's talking to Victarion and he's saying, he's forgotten how hard it is to control the Ironborn, because the Ironborn seem content with the shields and all this other stuff. They're not thinking the big picture, and so he's struggling to control them. And so then he sends Victarion to go get Daenerys for him and all that stuff. But it's those small moments in which we can see into Euron that maybe he isn't the confident, cocksure character that we see when he's always speaking to everyone else. And so we don't see Euron all throughout A Dance with Dragons. There's theories about Euron possibly being different characters, but we don't actually physically see him in his body and all that in all of A Dance with Dragons, which is crazy given he's being built up as the next big bad. He's completely absent for a whole book. And so then we get to the Winds of Winter sample chapters, and we get to the Forsaken chapter, which is, I would say, up there as one of the best chapters in the entire series. And we once again get to see Euron a little bit more in a personal light. We get to uncover a little bit more about Euron and his relationship with his brother, and how dark that past is in terms of the abuse that Euron probably was being given by Euron, and how Euron has been, taking shade of the evening, something I didn't really bring up because there's just so many mysteries to talk about with Euron. And Euron is, seeing things. He's seeing the future. It reminds you a lot of the House of the Undying with Daenerys, for instance, and he's psychologically torturing his brother Euron. And the craziest part of it is, we get so much foreshadowing to the possibility that Euron, is he going to become like some sort of kraken creature that Euron sees? Is Euron going to awaken krakens by doing these huge big blood sacrifices? Is he going to marry Cersei? There's so much left up in the air about Euron because we only see him really 4 times. We see him in 2 Victarion chapters, the Kingsmoot chapter, and then Aeron's chapter in the Winds of Winter. And that's it. That's all we see of the character. But he's such a heavy influence. There's so much that's so interesting to talk about him as a character with so little that George has actually given to us, the audience, to speculate on. And that's the beauty of the character of Euron. You just don't know what his next move is. That's the hardest part about the character, is we haven't fully been shown that story of Euron, what fully motivates him, becoming a god or whatnot. So let's shift gears then, right? So I tried to explain to you guys why so many people love the character of Euron, even though we haven't got a ton of him at all. Let's shift to the show. So the show, I can't even really remember a moment in which Euron is even alluded to in the show. It's kind of similar to the way Tysha is, where Tysha in the show is not really a character. She's really alluded to maybe once or twice very briefly. And so Euron is a character that basically doesn't exist. He kind of comes out of nowhere. So we get to season 6, which another crazy part is you would have thought Euron would have shown up in season 5, or at least there would have been some alluding to it. But no, randomly in season 6, they just do roughly the Kingsmoot and they just throw it at you. There's no build up to it. There's no even real rationale as to why there's a Kingsmoot to begin with in the show. Balon is shown being killed by Euron, which completely destroys any of the surprise. The mystery around Euron's character was really done poorly, in my opinion. If anything, if they were going to have an assassin kill Balon, don't show the assassin's face. Don't even have there be some sort of talk that's happening. Just show Balon dying. And I don't even think you need to really do that either. But at that point, it just doesn't make any sense to call it Kingsmoot, because think about it. Euron at no point has been shown to exist as a character. And so in a lot of ways, it comes off as they're trying to rewrite the show. In the show, it's just wait, why haven't we learned of Balon having a brother for all these different years? And you can kind of excuse it of, oh, well, Euron's kind of been in exile and he's been doing his own thing, so nobody talks about him. really? Like, Theon and Asha never, like, mention this character at all in the TV show? Kind of weird. But then the Kingsmoot, why would you call it anyway? Like, there's only really 3 main contenders for the throne, but one of them you don't even know is alive at this point. Outside of Asha knows that he's being tortured and all that stuff, and we even have that horrible scene in season 4 where Asha tries to break Theon out, and yes, her name is Asha, not Yara. We're not gonna have a debate about that, but yeah. And Asha says, her brother is dead. And so Theon at this point isn't even really a character for the Ironborn. Like, the Ironborn would not be thinking about Theon at all. So Asha is really the only person that has a claim to the throne. And even people don't even realize, like, Euron even is at the Kingsmoot, it feels like. So it's like, why is there a Kingsmoot being called? Who in their right mind called the Kingsmoot? And what the show does, the show makes it seem like, oh, the Ironborn just do this all the time. That, oh yeah, when somebody dies, there's a Kingsmoot to decide who's going to become king and all of that. That's not at all how the story is supposed to go. The Kingsmoot is something that is extremely rare and is unheard of in terms of the Greyjoy culture. That happened a long time ago, the last time a Kingsmoot actually was occurring. So the idea on the show and the premise of the Kingsmoot already doesn't make any sense because Victarion is not there, so why would someone call a Kingsmoot unless they thought some random was going to have more support than Asha, like the last true Greyjoy at this point, because Euron isn't really there. He's just not a person yet. So whatever, the Kingsmoot gets called, Theon is backing Asha, and then Euron just comes striding up. The look is terrible. He doesn't look anything like Euron from the book. There's no mysteriousness to this character. He just comes off as like this edgy guy that like was going through like an emo phase, and maybe he was going to Hot Topic, if you guys know that place. I had friends that were loosely in that phase, so I kind of know, but I wasn't. So whatever, not the point. Euron just comes off as like he's trying to be edgy, but he's like not. He's just some basic white dude that has no mystery to him. And when he does his whole speech where it's like, oh, when people see my sails, they pray, it's like, it comes off as really hollow, because why should anybody fear this character? He's not been established that we should care about him at all. There's no foreshadowing to the character. And so he just comes off as a moron. And then when he starts doing things like, oh, he's going to go to Daenerys and he's going to give her his massive cock. And it's just like, really? The Ironborn, this is what they're going for. This random dude who's just showed up randomly. He hasn't been a part of the Greyjoy war effort. He has literally no connection to any of the Ironborn at this point. And they just elect him king for some reason, I guess. And then he's like, oh, we're gonna go hunt down my nephews, Asha and Theon. Yeah, they've got to die and all this stuff. And it's just like, what? We took a character that is one of the most mysterious characters that George very much wants us to take seriously. And I guess D&D also had the idea that, yeah, we're going to take Euron seriously when we see this. No. And we just boil him down to this one-note guy. We dumb down the Ironborn more than they even were. The Ironborn are by far the population with the least amount of brain cells. But at least in terms of the Kingsmoot is actually a really interesting argument, because it's a lot of different politics. It's a lot of different beliefs. It's a very interesting and deep read when you really think about it. The Kingsmoot in the show is, I have a cock and you guys don't, so I should be king. And it's like, yes, there is this idea that Asha becoming queen and the pushback she's going to get from that because she's a woman, that is an interesting thing to explore. House of the Dragon, that whole concept is Rhaenyra trying to be queen because Viserys names her that, but then people pushing back because she's a woman. That is a very interesting thing to go down, but they don't do that. And then Euron for the next 2 seasons is just some babbling idiot who gets extremely lucky, has plot armor where people just don't understand where his fleet is, and he just wins random stuff. I mean, maybe his best action was he kills the sand snakes. So there's that. It's just so crazy to me how much they fumbled this character. And you don't even really need to talk about Euron past his introduction, because his introduction is everything you needed to know about why this character stinks. They give him terrible humor that undercuts the character. He feels like a Marvel character. He feels like a product of Marvel was at its peak when around season 6 was happening, season 7, season 8. And they were like, hey, we can do that. Let's have a character that has Marvel quips and is not to be taken seriously at all. and we just throw him in there as like the character from the book. And what's crazier is another one of these actors that wanted to actually do the Euron character right, the actor who played Euron, knew what the character of Euron was like, how magical, mysterious he was, and D&D straight up just said, we're not doing it like that. You know, it's the same thing of what they did with Barristan, where Barristan is one of my favorite characters in Song of Ice and Fire. I would assume he is for a lot of you guys as well. And they randomly just kill him off for shock value when it was illogical. It was not a payoff to his character overall. Having him die in an alley to some random Sons of the Harpy is just disrespectful. And the reason I bring this up is the actor who played Barristan also knew that there was more to the character in the books and tried to get D&D to understand that they should, you know, keep his character alive. And D&D basically responded with, that made us want to kill the character more. And so, yeah, that kind of gets us to the end of the video. Euron as a character in the books is a deeply complex character that us, the audience, are being challenged by George to figure out who he is and what, you know, he's going to do in the future. And he has so much that we're trying to find out. You know, every time Euron is on the page, it's captivating to read. Euron has only appeared in 4 chapters, like I mentioned, but 2 of those chapters, in my opinion, the Kingsmoot and then also the Forsaken chapter, are up there as the best of the entire series. That is how great of a villain George has built him up to be in only a little amount of time. And unfortunately, we see Euron, who dies in the show, saying he's the person that killed Jaime Lannister. That's all I gotta say. I'll leave you guys with this.
Does you like it gentle or rough? A finger in the bum.
If you're ever trying to marry someone's sister, don't ask them if they like a finger in the bum. It's crazy that scene ever happened. It's probably the worst scene and or dialogue of the entire show. So thank you guys all for watching. Tell me why you hate Euron in the show, what they got wrong, why they stumbled on the character in the show versus the book. And I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.